Hi, I'm Jeff Bermudez.
And I'm Omar Kadri.
Welcome to The Collective Journey.
Join us as we explore some of the most promising talents, thought leaders, and change influencers in our city and beyond.
As we uncover these hidden gems, I hope you'll find that they're people just like you and I, with hopes and dreams and gifts that they would like to show to the world.
It is our mission to share their work, to share their story, and to appreciate what our community is capable of producing.
This is my adventure.
This is your adventure.
This is our collective journey.
Our next guest is a young charismatic student who is currently studying game design at Fanshawe College. He is also a seasoned DJ with experience in the radio industry. Today he talks with us about his learning process, where his passion comes from, and his love for Sonic the Hedgehog. We proudly present to you Dan Drouillard.
So I got into game design at a really young age. I think I was maybe about 12 years old, modding Minecraft. I started playing around with how to load my own assets and stuff into the game. I didn't see it going any further than just a hobby to do on the side, right? But then eventually, it was around the time that Destiny 1 came out, Bungie started doing these little vlogs and stuff about where most of the designers come from. And a lot of them said that they were modders, they modded this game or this game. And when they came out of the modding community, they got a job at Bungie and they became designers. So I thought, I could do that. Why not?
Okay, that's really interesting. What were some interesting mods that you made? What were some of the things that you worked on?
Well, I'd say the one that got me recognition in the Minecraft modding community, there's a plugin called World Edit, which allows players to use brushes and stuff to change terrain, things like that, quickly. So I sort of rebuilt that plugin as a mod that was embedded into the game. It allowed for items rather than just commands.
How did you kind of learn how to read that stuff? To most people, it's just numbers and letters on a screen, and it doesn't mean anything. How did you kind of teach yourself how to analyze that?
I mean, frankly, most of it is just looking at numbers and letters on a screen and hoping to God that something stands out. But a lot of it is similar to just any language. It's a matter of learning the basic syntax. Instead of using and the whatever, you use this character. And once you can figure out those basics, it's generally pretty easy to find the kind of stuff and then modify it however you see fit.
That's cool. Do you speak any other languages?
Well, I speak English, I speak French, I'm learning German, and if you consider coding languages, there's 4 or 5 others that I could sort of work in.
So would you say that you're fluent in all 4 of those?
English, I wouldn't even say that I'm super fluent in English, frankly. French is probably the one I'm most fluent in. German, I know enough basic sentence structure and a few words. Are there
any coding languages that you are more fluent in than spoken languages?
Probably C++. It's the one that I'm the most fluent in. Generally, I can express myself a lot more easily through writing a chunk of code on a screen than I can by writing a tweet out or something,
We have a lot of creatives on this show. We've interviewed a filmmaker. The last episode, the guy we talked with, basically, he discussed his journey into music creation. Mm-hmm. And one of the themes that we discussed is about how when you're creating a piece of art, you're trying to provide an experience for your audience. Mm-hmm. Do you find that you're actively thinking about that when you're working on these projects? Or is it much more like you're just messing around?
I've found that most of the time it's literally just I'm bored, I'll try doing this. But every once in a while I try to, when making, because I've made my own music and stuff, I DJ, and I found that when doing that kind of stuff, while a lot of it is for my own personal enjoyment, there definitely does seem to be a component that's I'm making it for others, so therefore I'd want it to appeal to other people.
Did I just hear that you said that you DJ?
Yeah.
What type of, is it electronic music?
It really depends on the gig, frankly, because I've done everything from a country hall, which was a blast to do. That was so much fun. I did one show that was almost entirely in French. That one was
Okay.
a little complicated, but generally I tend to veer more so to either electronic or poppy. But on my own free time, I'll mix whatever. A lot of video game soundtrack, if anything.
Oh, okay. In terms of music, what genres would you say that you enjoy in your personal time?
Ooh, that's a really tough one. I've grown up with being exposed to music my whole life. I mean, my dad's been in the radio industry since I was born, so I can't really say specifically that there's a genre I tend to lean more to, more just individual tracks. But if I had to throw a name out there, probably either video game soundtrack or country's just the default that I listen to.
Okay.
That's really interesting. So your dad, you said, works currently still in the radio industry?
Yeah.
Is that back in Tecumseh?
Yep. We've worked at he's worked at a few different stations, and because of it we've moved around more than a few times, but currently he's living back home in Tecumseh and he's working there.
Well, I see your bag. It says Blackburn Radio Inc. So, like, I imagine they do a lot of people in Ontario, so...
Oh, yeah,
Is that, like, the main company he's just stuck with, and then he goes through the different, like, firms that they offer?
Blackburn has, I want to say, about 5 or 6 different stations, 3 of which are... No. Maybe about 8 stations, 5 of which are based out of Windsor. So he manages those stations as the broadcast engineer. So he's basically the one who maintains the station, and... when something breaks, he's the one that's on call.
So it's much more like managerial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you ever like done radio before this, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've done like a few shows, a few podcasts, some interviews. Lord knows how many commercials. Like,
really?
Yeah, if you go far enough in the Team 990 archives up in Montreal, I'm sure you can find about 5 or 6 ads that I voice in.
Really? And
Lord
these
knows how
are
many
like
Blackburn archives too.
These are like ads that aired on the radio?
Oh yeah.
Really? How old were you when you did this?
Well, my most recent one that I advertised in terms of radio advertising, I want to say I was about 16 years old. But my oldest one, way long ago, I think I was maybe about 5 years old.
Wow, that's like some Michael Jackson stuff right there.
Yeah, it's...
What are some of the stuff that you advertised for, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, most of them I frankly can't remember because I was just brought into the studio told, say this in front of the microphone. Don't ask questions. Here's a Snickers.
That's jokes.
But... I've done a little bit of auto advertising, mostly just like saying basic lines like, oh, I love this car, stuff like that. I've done school events I've advertised for. Blackburn, they had this show, I don't know if they still run it, but it was this class of the week thing where, students would vote on which class they think deserves class of the week. And then the company would go and bring pizza to the students and stuff. Well, when they were starting that show, they didn't have sound bites of any kids saying, hi, I'm so-and-so from this class, and we won class of the week. So they brought in maybe a dozen kids to record some basic lines, and I was one of them.
Like, so you lived in Montreal for a bit?
I lived up there for 2 years of my life. I've jumped around pretty frequently, especially in more recent years, but I lived up there for 2 years. My dad was working with Team 990, which is a AM sports station up there. It was really cool getting to go to different events.
Do you remember if you did it mainly in English or was some of it in French as well?
Technically, it was an English station, but we had certain ads that would run in French, more so plugging the French sister station, which was owned by CTV or whatever. I remember doing a couple lines in French, but not very many. I think maybe 2 ads.
Okay. If we could go back, because this is very interesting for me. You said that you really enjoy video game scores as a form of music, and having played a few of these, it's undoubtedly true. They do put a lot of work into it, and some of these sounds are very classic. They bring up feelings of nostalgia, and they bring you right back to exact moments where you were playing that game. So I know that a lot of soundtracks being thrown around are Ocarina of Time. There's so many Final Fantasies, but there's one of them that really stands out. I think it was the MMO Final Fantasy that gets thrown around a lot.
Oh, I know Final Fantasy 7 gets
it was 7
of praise.
Yes, that was the one, and Ragnarok Online.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any video game scores that you find personally touched your life?
Well, funny enough, I wrote an assignment in class about this a couple weeks ago for the game theory assignment.
Oh, I think I remember reading it, yeah.
I'd say one that really hits me hard is the Sonic Generations soundtrack, which is kind of ironic when you think about it, because very little of its music is original. It's all remixes of previous tracks.
Mm-hmm.
But I find just something about the way that they because that game's by far the best in the franchise, in my opinion. And I find the music really emphasizes this.
Well, it's kind of like a celebration, right? Like the entire game is really just an appreciation of what has come before, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at like the technology, like the Genesis and the Dreamcast, like these have limitations on like what kind of music can be outputted. But like now that you know it's come to modern consoles, when you can add the sound quality that's able to be generated by these consoles, and you do that remastering or remixing or things like that, it really just adds like a whole new layer. And you not only do you see this kind of like in the game industry, you see this across like a lot of industries. Like for music, they're always remastering soundtracks.
Oh, for sure.
Or remastering albums. In movies, they always have like the HD re-release, the 4K re-release. And in games, they have the HD remasters. Or like remakes, like they just remade like the entire Crash Bandicoot franchise. Or like, they remade Resident Evil, things like that.
But I don't think that means that like, necessarily the new stuff's better, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, I have a soft spot for certain newer songs because those are the ones that were like my introductions to these franchises. But like, I found older games, that retro chiptune style.
Yeah.
Even with modern equipment, it doesn't seem like there's a way to replicate it. Like, there always has to be some sort of, real drum beat or something that's added.
So was there a charm to the lo-fi
definitely.
Quality of it?
Definitely. Like, there's nothing more satisfying to me than booting up my Genesis and hearing that classic little Sega with the really horrible chiptune quality that one soundbite took up a third of the cartridge of the game, and then starting it up and it's all these retro classic sounds. There isn't a feeling like it, in my opinion.
So this is more of a comment, and I guess you can feel free to build upon it, and I guess let me know what you think of it if you disagree or agree. I find that a lot of the scores that inspire people, that a lot of gamers hold on to and look back fondly at, because they are MMOs, they have a very inspiring quality to them. They range from anthemic to relaxing to just an overall feeling of getting you hyped. And I feel that it's because you're spending so much time playing these games, like an MMO like Final Fantasy VII, or a game that you have to play the levels over and over in Ocarina. It's almost as if the composers have it in mind that you will be doing this over and over again, and so the music really has to latch onto you and make you enjoy to do something repeatedly. Oh,
definitely. I mean, and some of the most iconic tracks in gaming, like the Mario Bros. Theme, the da-da-da-da-da-da, like Green Hill Zone, the Pokemon battle music. One of the things that makes them so iconic isn't necessarily the melody that you hear that's like, boom, I know exactly what that is. What makes them iconic is that you have to hear them thousands upon thousands of times. So whether you like it or not, it gets ingrained into your skull.
I don't know, that Pokemon battle music, man. Like, I think every kid that played the game must have heard it like at least 1,000 times.
Oh yeah,
You
but
just get so they have to design it in a way that's easy listening, I imagine. Because like you can't just like throw anything in there, because eventually some people will just like put it off. Like, have you ever like played a game that was like so terrible with its music or with its sound design that you just couldn't even continue with it? Kind of like a whole like Jar Jar Binks kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. So coming back to the Sonic franchise, because that's the one I've sunk way too much time into. I found throughout the whole franchise the music's been pretty good, like ranging from pretty good to downright amazing, with the exception of one game, which is infamous, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. It's a horrible game. Like, no one, it's not good. But one of the things that made it so bad, like before that, Sonic 06 was considered the worst game, and there's a lot of reasons why that game is not good.
Yeah, you can just research online and find out what those are.
Yeah, I don't need to go into that, otherwise we'll be here for hours.
I guess you could say that some of these scores have saved many a controller and keyboard from getting destroyed.
Oh, definitely. Like 06 sucks, but the music's probably, in my opinion, the best of the franchise. If not, it's way up there. Like, it had a crazy good soundtrack. The theme of the game is just incredible.
It's a waste for that the designer, the person who made the music. I feel bad for them, you know.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
the game got crammed out. Like, the game was really crunched down to like a 6-month span or something like that to try to come out with the release of one of the new consoles.
I imagine that a lot of our listeners are accustomed to the original Sonic the Hedgehog, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you probably of all people would know about the whole like rise and fall of that franchise. Like, do you want to talk maybe a little bit? Maybe you want to talk a little bit about like, you know, why, like what happened, like what how did Sega drop the ball on that? Like, well, why did they just start sucking? Like, why did they just start getting so terrible?
Well, so what it is initially, like with the first few games, the whole marketing ploy around Sonic as a character was meant to be this competitor to Mario. You know, this character is supposed to be the cool, edgy new thing that's going to take down Nintendo. I mean, their tagline in the 90s was Sega does what Nintendo don't. It was a literal jab at the company. And the thing is, they held on to that style all the way up until the Dreamcast. But what ended up happening is, due to a couple commercial flops with, like, pretty much the entire Sega Saturn console.
$3.99.
Yeah, it did not go well there. But
interesting.
The Dreamcast was like Sega's last hurrah. And after that, they dropped out of the console race and were pretty much forced to go into third party. Most of it was going into Nintendo, you know, developing games for Nintendo systems.
That's so terrible, man. You just have to like you have to just go to your enemy just to stay alive.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying that's what killed it, but it's definitely seemed like ever since that point, the games have had a more childish undertone, whereas the previous games had more of a, like, you know, teen, like, edgy, cool attitude.
Yeah, well, Sonic, the original ones are very synonymous with, like, the 90s, right?
Oh, definitely.
Like, I remember, I think I was listening to Sirius XM, and there was, like, a 90s channel, and,
yeah.
like, one of the commercials, you could hear, like, the sound effects of the rings and, like, the Sega, you know, like...
Yeah.
And like, it's iconic with 90s pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But it seemed like what Sega thought was the appeal to the character and to the franchise was the speed, which, you know, if it's really cool, it's a lot of fun, but I don't feel like that's the entire appeal to the character. And in modern incarnations, like, specifically, it seemed like they've taken more of a childish approach because, you know, furry blue creature must appeal to kids.
Turns into a werewolf now.
Oh, that one was... The day stages in that game were incredible. Yeah. It was so much fun. The best of the best. Night stages, not so much.
Well, let's shift kind of away from Sonic and let's talk about your games. So you were telling me earlier that you're working on a few projects. You're in video game design with me. So like you know basically you're you know studying the theory and the technique behind it, right? Mm-hmm. But before you went into that, you had already been working on a few games yourself. Let's talk a little bit about that stuff.
Yeah, so right now I'm currently working on 3 games, one of which is I'm not going to disclose too much about that one, but it's a survival horror based on an event that happened in class, funny enough. You know exactly which event I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
But so the other 2 that I'm working on, one is more of, it's supposed to be this boss rush style game, similar to like WarioWare.
Yeah.
And that one's basically just so I can play around with different scripts, mechanics. The other one is this big open world sci-fi thing, like kind of like Skyrim, but more sci-fi, obviously.
By sci-fi, is it like a spaceship, a space station?
Is it like Mass Effect?
Yeah, I'd say Mass Effect's pretty close to it. I feel like the setting itself is a lot more science fiction, you know, alien world, alien tech, etc. But I feel like the play style feels very fantasy and like oriented. Like, even though it's laser swords, it's still swords. It's still like that kind of equipment.
What would be the perspective? Would it be a third person, a first person, or could you do both, just like in Skyrim?
Currently I have it programmed to do both, so you can either jump between first and third. But recently I've been getting a lot of feedback on like some of the programming and stuff, some of my ideas, and someone gave me a bit of advice, which was to lock it to a first person perspective based on the theme of the game, and I kind of agree with them. I feel like it would work a little better in first person.
Okay.
Well, think about it. You only have so much time to develop this, right?
Yeah.
And like when you add that new perspective, you have to do a whole new level of testing, a whole new level of polishing just because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you lock it to one perspective, you can allocate your time to a lot more of the features, and make it a little bit more polished overall. As opposed, instead of it being a game that's like a jack of all trades, master of none, it's much more specialized.
Yeah, but I found the problem with it is I like how the problem with first person games compared to third person, in my opinion, is first person do not generally they don't generally like put a lot of emphasis on the modeling and the characters themselves. Whereas third person puts a lot more emphasis on that, but not as much on the environment.
That's true. Me personally, I would prefer the environment, because like you have games like BioShock, or games like Firewatch, or games like Gone Home, where it's like it's literally the environment that tells the story.
Yeah.
I loved one of my favorite moments in video games that I've ever seen was in The Last of Us. It was very violent and very graphic, but it was well done.
Yeah.
You walk into a building, and you see a bathtub that's filled with black water, and there's a skeleton in it. And there's a skeleton just there, and you can tell it's been there for a while, and there's like a little like suicide note there.
Yeah.
And you can pick it up and you can read it. And it's like that really like there's no voice acting, there's no like character detail, you don't know anything about what the person looked like.
Yeah.
It's a little piece of narrative and environment design, yet it's still able to tell you such a powerful story in such a brief moment. And it's just a glance. You're literally just glancing at it and walking away.
Yeah.
So I guess if you're gonna focus on those sorts of details, locking it to a first person perspective would be more of a appropriate decision.
It would be more appropriate for that. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm still playing around with the idea because I still have the script in place to where I can do either or, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we'll see. I might lock it to a first person, or I might end up going both routes.
This one I always wanted to ask. I just wanted us to go through some of our favorite iconic gaming moments in any video game that we've played. For example, mine is the opening of Grand Theft Auto 4. Mm-hmm. You hear that classic GTA 4 music at the beginning, and you hear them rushing and hustling to get off the boat and into a new country, which is the U.S. And I just thought it was very iconic, not just because of the memories that it brought up, but it also represented immigrants. Mm-hmm. And for all intents and purposes, it was supposed to represent a simulation of New York. It was Liberty City.
Yeah.
So I thought that tied into as well the historic legacy of New York as being a place that takes in all cultures. It's the ultimate melting pot.
Yeah, yeah.
What moment in gaming would you find stuck with you?
It's hard to say. There's a lot. Frankly, there's a lot for different aspects. Like, first time picking up a video game, first time doing this, I'd have to say one of the most iconic moments for me would probably be I was playing Destiny 1 with a few friends, and it was the first time I got through the Taken King raid, which, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a long raid. It took about a day to get through, but it was so worth it. The gear that you got from it, the cooperation, it's a lot of coordination between the players. You know, you have to have some people standing on here, some people standing here. Like, and the thing is, the game doesn't tell you at all what you're supposed to do. It's like, here's an open door, here's a room full of enemies, and a couple glowy things. Figure it out. So to get through that raid for the first time, it was incredible. And just seeing the boss fall at the end, it really stuck with me.
I guess there's a lot for me. Like, it's hard to just pick one, but I guess the first one that comes to mind would be finding out that Sheik was Zelda. That was a very, like as a child, I know a lot of people that played the game probably thought it was more obvious, but I wasn't one of those people. Because, like, I remember reading the game and, like, characters would say, like, oh, a young man named Sheik helped me. And this ninja is, like, kind of helping you throughout the game, and I'm just completely under the impression that the gender is male.
Yeah.
And I'm completely under the impression it's just some dude that's, like, helping you throughout the entire path. And then suddenly they give this huge revelation that dude that's been helping you the whole time is actually the princess that you've been trying to rescue. And she's been, like, helping you out along. And, like, Nintendo, they're pretty popular for doing things like that. They're all about, like, you know, power to the female protagonist. Like one of their biggest Easter eggs that they ever did was in Metroid. At the end of the first Metroid game, you're playing as this bounty hunter that's wearing a suit. You can't see the face. And the entire game you're playing and you know, based off of the stereotypical character in a video game, you just assume it's a male.
Yeah.
But if you beat the game in less than 4 hours, the Easter egg shows you it's like, congratulations, you're a girl. And you find out that Samus is a girl.
It was, you know, by far the biggest thing of the time. I was like, holy cow.
Like, and I find that, like, that theme is becoming way more prominent than it has ever been. Like, the new Battlefield game, even though it takes place in, I'm trying to double check here. It could be World War II, World War I. It's a world war. And there was a lot of controversy on the internet about it because you have the option to select a female soldier, right? And a lot of people were arguing, like, oh, women didn't fight in World War II, that kind of a thing, right? And, like, it's nice. Like, IGN released an actual article, and it was an article where it's like 20 examples of women that fought in World War II.
Yeah.
You know, and I as a gamer, I do appreciate that, you know, designers are thinking about that more often. Because you know, like, why would a woman be more inclined to play a game if she doesn't have the option to play it in a way that she can express herself?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a huge demographic of people that's being left out.
Yeah. I mean, I could go into the statistics, but frankly, I can't remember most of the stats off the top of my head. But, like,
Moblock would be disappointed.
But, like, it's still, I think it's like a 45-55 split or something like that, you know?
I don't know. Like, that was surprising when I read that stat, because I'm just basing it off of my personal experience.
Split of between who, like, male gamers and female gamers. It's like most people think, oh, it's mostly dudes that play games and so on and so forth. It's like ridiculously close. It's
that
like
is
maybe
very
a 5%
close.
difference.
That's close to half.
So why not appeal to both sides, right?
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the show. That's all the time that we have for this week. But join us again next episode as we conclude our conversation with this week's guest. If you or somebody you know would like to be on the show, hit us up on any of our social media. We are Collective Journey on Facebook. We are Collective Journey on YouTube. We are Collective_Journey on Instagram. And always remember, this is not just my adventure, but it's yours as well. This is our Collective Journey.